Today we're going to talk about the American natives, the Native Americans who converted to Islam. Why does nobody talk about that? Why does it make sense for Muslims and the natives to have intertwined? We're going to talk about some irrefutable proofs. I researched this topic for like 4 weeks straight because I was just so intrigued. I was like, whoa. I mean, if I could, I'd spend an entire year on it. Okay. And like my favorite part of like Muslims reaching the Americas before Columbus did is the part where they got in touch with the natives and they became great friends. And I was so excited to talk about that. But I'll be honest with you, before I got to that, I first had to discuss the history of natives, and that killed me. Like that drained me because it's so sad. It's so horrific what has been done to them in the Americas. Okay. Anyways, we're going to improve the atmosphere because we're going to talk about the Muslims and the indigenous people. And that is not sad anymore. Okay. That is happy. Okay. What did I talk about? Okay, so you already know the Muslims were there. I mean, there's people like Ibn Said Ibn Aswad who went there. The books by al-Masudi, al-Idrisi, they talk about it. There's many more historians and stories of Abu Bakr II from the Mali Empire who went there. So many different people have confirmed this. It's professors from Yale, NYU, Harvard, multiple professors at Harvard. A lot of them have passed since though, and there's just a lot of Arabic sources as well, and like I said last time, those are perfectly usable. Those are very credible. Okay, why did we not hear about this a lot though? Well, I first want to make a little bit of correction there. This is very well known in some tribes within in America. There are certain tribes where I've spoken to government officials of the tribes who told me that they actually teach this information to all of the people. And I think there's also people who read the Muslim books, for example, by al-Masudi, al-Idrisi, where this is mentioned. Then we have the irrefutable proofs, and there's some politicians who have written about this, spoken about this. One of them is Thomas Jefferson. He was a president of the US, and he wasn't a great person. Like, he was pretty terrible towards the natives as well, but there were parts of them that he really respected. And I think he is one of these presidents that actually knew that there were Muslims amongst the natives. The reason why is because he did a very, elaborate study, not just in the US, but also in North Africa, to find out the origins of the language of the natives. And so it's very peculiar that he started looking for these origins in North Africa. And so he had a lot of evidence gathered, but they actually stole it. And I think probably the government stole it because they didn't want him to have it. And so that was something that I thought was like super cool. And I think there's something that, okay, I cannot talk about it now. It will come later, but there's another thing I want to talk about. Is it here already? Highly civilized. Oh yeah, it's here. Okay, listen. Thomas Jefferson, he based the American system, the federal system, on what he learned from the natives. Okay? So he looked at how the natives were organized, how they were with laws, how they were with treating people. And he took the inspiration from them, and he said he created the federal system based on the wisdom and the knowledge of the First Nations. I want to say it right. First Nations. Okay. And I think that's amazing. And it's really similar to Muslims because Muslim law, Sharia law, was actually implemented in France. For example, Napoleon, he took the laws that we had in the Muslim lands and he made the civic code in France based on Sharia law. I mean, we have King Charles, who spoke very positively in his Oxford speech about Sharia law, advising everybody to look into it because it's based on equity and compassion. I mean, what do I need to say more? Like, I have so much to say, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't want to even say anything. Like, it's done. Okay. Like, you know this information. Go read, go educate yourself. Like, this is amazing. Okay. I don't need to explain anything anymore, but I'm going to explain everything because I love explaining it. Okay. Anyways, that I thought was very interesting. Thomas Jefferson, there was also this idea that he might be Muslim. Like, he was very secretive about his religious beliefs, but he was very positive about Muslims and like the values of Muslims. And he had his own Quran as well. Juicy, very juicy. Okay, anyways. So this is something I read also in the book by Barry Fell, who was a Harvard professor. And I don't know, I just thought it was amazing. Okay, we're already at the point where I'm talking about the irrefutable proofs, right? I already said that. Okay, yeah, I think I said that. Anyways, then we're going to go to Alan McHale, and he's actually the Yale professor who I mentioned a lot during not my previous podcast, like two podcasts ago. And basically, he said that, obviously the Spaniards went there to the Americas. They went there. They arrived in South America, in the Caribbean. Anyways, we know that the Portuguese went there, but also the Brits went there. So we know from the Spaniards, for example, the son of Christopher Columbus, he admit that, the people they encountered there who had, clothes on that made them look like Moors. We had other people like Cortez who said, they looked like he saw more than, I think, 400 mosques. We had Rodrigo de Triana who went there and he converted to Islam. They all went to the Americas. All of them said, Islam is there. But the Brits also went there. And look, these people knew what they were talking about, okay? Because these people were traveling the world to rob places. You already know that. I explained it last time. They weren't navigators. They weren't explorers. They were robbers. And so they were going around the world to rob all these places. And so they knew what Muslims looked like, okay? They knew how they behaved. They knew what their mosques looked like. So when they went to the Americas, you're going to tell me that they saw all these things that they described as mosques, people who wore hijab, they heard adhan, and they were like confused. They were not like thinking, okay, these are Muslims. They knew what Muslims were like, okay? So that's my little rant, because some people say like, oh no, he saw actually temples by the indigenous people and they confused it with mosques. Sweetie, they were robbing all types of places, getting in touch with the Muslims who they were so afraid of. They knew who Muslims were, and they knew that there were Muslims there. Okay, that was my little rant. Then we also have Barry Fell, and Barry Fell is a Harvard professor. I've mentioned him a million times. He basically mentions that when the colonizers, the occupiers arrived, there were more than 500 places that were named after Muslim places, okay? For example, Mecca, there was Medina, obviously in New York, Hazen, North Dakota. Ohio has a Medina. There's Mohammed in Illinois. Mona in Utah. Arva in Ontario, Canada. Okay, listen. Some people try to debunk this and they're like, oh no, they named these places after Muslim places because they had such good relations with them. They're lying, okay? They didn't name a place Mohammed in Illinois because they had good relations with the Muslims. The Spaniards just had a huge war with the Muslims. The Brits definitely didn't have good relationships with the Muslims. None of them had good relationships with the Muslims. They only had been afraid of them, beaten down by them. They were not going to go to the US and then like name all these places after Muhammad and like all of these things. Like, it doesn't happen. So that's a lie. And all of these places, you can find them yourself. But also, okay, this is one thing I had to say because one of my followers, he has 9 kids and he wanted me to mention a specific thing. I couldn't mention it last time because I didn't have it written down, but Tallahassee, I promised him I would mention it specifically for his kids. Tallahassee, what does it mean? It means Allah will deliver you something in the future, which is also a place in the US. Barry Fell didn't just stop there. He has so much evidence, like the thing I told you about Thomas Jefferson, that's his book, okay? He also had this other thing, which is the names of the Indian tribes, because he basically said that many of them had Arabic and Islamic roots, like Anasazi, Apache, Arawak. Arawak is basically, I think the W is supposed to be a B. and it's supposed to be Arabic. Okay, so anyways, Arikana, Shafin, Cherokee, Cree, Hohokam, Hupa, Hopi, Maka, Mihagan, Mohawk, Nasa, Zulu, and Zuni. We're all, Zuni makes sense, Muslim-inspired names of the tribes, okay? I mean, that really gets to what we're discussing today. The tribes were named after Muslim words, Arabic words, okay? So yeah. Oh my God, we're already at the end. I have so much to say still. Okay, anyways, I'm gonna quickly say it. Okay, we're getting at something that I think is so cool. Okay, listen. In Canada, when they were trying to erase the indigenous identity, they wanted them to learn the Bible, obviously. Do you know in which language they were teaching the indigenous people, the tribe specifically Cree, and also another tribe called Algonquin? They were teaching them the Bible in Arabic, okay? I thought that was amazing. A missionary teacher, his name was James Evan, he was teaching the natives the Bible in Arabic. That's amazing. Okay, anyways. That's a mic drop. Okay, that's a mic drop over there. I don't even have to say anything anymore. I have basically also the script because the script was actually classical Arabic, and that's how they were trying to teach them the Bible because they knew they spoke Arabic, and that's how they had to teach them to erase their identity. And so this is also found in the book by Barry Fell. And okay, so that's one thing, but I don't know. I cannot, like, my heart is exploding right now. Okay, anyways. Then we also have, Yahya Sahudi, which is the professor from the King Khalid University. He also, in his researches, mentions how Ali Idrisi mentions in his book, and the book is called Excursion of the Longing One in Crossing Horizons. He talks about how North African seafarers, they went into the darkness and fog, which is the Atlantic Ocean, and they actually got to the Americas, and that over there, a translator came to speak Arabic to them. So there were people there who spoke Arabic already. Okay, I have other accounts as well. One is from a Cherokee who was still Muslim. Then we have one other US politician, which is really exciting. I also did an interview with a girl who is a revert native, and I want to talk to you about her as well. I'm going to tell you all of that. And yeah, that's it. So thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to my channel because that helps me. And also, if you want to become a public speaker, please sign up for the course, speakoutcourse.com. That's it. Bye, guys. See you next time.